Okay. Sarayim Tov, everyone. We are continuing our second lesson in the Bayam Darkecha regarding the topic of Bitol that we begin to explain. We're still in the first Perek Aleph, Mahus Habitol, what is Bitol, and subsection Aleph, Hagdoras Mahus Habitol, the definition of what Bitol is. And we began to use some examples, some misholim that a person can be so consumed with something so overwhelming in front of him, he could begin to forget himself. But we said that that's not exactly a complete analogy because we're not talking about forgetting yourself, but the more you sense Hashem's reality, then you sense that Hashem's reality is inside too. As well, you sense that not only is there bittul for you, but there's bittul for others as well, that they are nullified before Hashem. So now we're picking it up in the bottom of the footnote here on page Aleph. But the main engagement in bittul, the main thing is to nullify yourself, meaning as hargashas hayeshus va'atzmius. You should nullify the feelings of yeshus. In English would translate terribly as somethingness, va'atzmius, and independence. Negate those. Ikar hakoshi, that's the hardest part. Ve'ikar havoda, but it's the main work, is to totally forget about that you're something and that you're independent, and to realize that it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avol ze efshar, but it's possible. Efshar l'adam lagil madrega. A person can reach such a level. Shargis kol kach es metzias Hashem yisbarach kan, that a person could feel so much the reality of Hashem here, as lo yargish esatzmo, until doesn't feel himself. Ubechol ma'aseh sheyaseh, and therefore in everything he's going to do, lo yiyaches es hamasaso, he should not attribute the results to himself. And certainly shouldn't wait to get honor for that. But rather to feel even in the moment of success in terms of how Hashem is found over here. And Hashem is one who did it. And I am just his vessel. I'm just his utensil. Anyone who merits to feel this way, I feel not even a little bit. You feel a little bit of this bittul. Yeshlo tanug niflo. He has a wondrous pleasure. You can't explain it in words. Pileploim. It's a wonder of wonders. When you're at that level, you're saved from so many negative attributes. You're saved from all the evils of the world of Baroshim, and the top ones are Mehagaiva, from arrogance, Arura, that's so accursed. That's the main source that pushes you away from Hashem, is your arrogance. It's the main source for anger, and depression, for lack of emunah. All the big ticket items in Yiddishkeit, you can get rid of them if you can be mevatel yourself. And for all the bitter things of life, things that are hate, enemies of the soul. And what are the three big ones? Hakina, hataiva, v'hakavod. Jealousy, lust, and honor. You're saved from all of them. And he's happy with however Hashem leads him. His life is very fortunate, spiritually and physically, satisfying. And all his service is done with a purity of heart. He's happy with his portion. Even in spirituality, he doesn't complain that I haven't grown enough. Even though a person should want to do all the mitzvahs of Hashem in perfection, you want to reach the highest levels, but still in all levels, but it has to all happen with simplicity. The recognition, what's the inner content and the goal of it all? Is to comprehend Hashem and cleave to him truly. Dahaina, which means Shani mitzidi, from my side, a person has to think, I shoef l'sameach es. I try my hardest to make my creator happy. Ulakaimas is called mitzvah shleimus, and to do the mitzvahs in perfection. We mentioned this earlier in the earlier chapter. But I don't do it so I should be a somebody. And not that the thing should come out from me to say that I'm the one who made it happen. I'm only doing it to make Hashem happy and to cleave to him. That's the only concern I have. So comes out, what if you don't succeed? If you don't get depressed, you don't feel that you've been failed on. But surrender in joy to the will of Hashem. Because that was the whole goal to begin with. Now, of course, it doesn't mean you say, well, I'm always a failure. No, but don't be saddened by the failure. It means you tried, it didn't work. Hashem was happy that you tried, and that's all you could do. And if you didn't succeed, okay, you're not out here to be a somebody. Of course, you reevaluate. You say, okay, Yetzer Hara got me this time. I should think of maybe I can think of other tactics to succeed, but don't call yourself a loser, because you got to realize that, that this is, if you just tried to please Hashem and that was your main goal, then you achieved it. The result is not success, is not in the results. It's in the sincere effort. And if you sincerely tried your best and you failed, then, that's okay. That's okay. Now, back upstairs, we have finished this long footnote, and we go back, the footnote is 10 times bigger than the main content. And the main content was saying that a person has to recognize and know that Hashem is doing everyone in the year like the messenger. Back to that point. Back to the main content on Nun Beis. V'nei. 1 second, let's just make sure that oh, wait. I'm sorry. It's so confusing sometimes. I got to go still below. I'm still below the line. I didn't get back. So he says, so you shouldn't be, if you don't succeed, you shouldn't be depressed. Even if you think that the will of Hashem was different, that maybe you should succeed. But now it's revealed, to reality, this really was the Ratz of Hashem. Maybe you think somebody else stopped it. Hashem is doing it all. In other words, let's say you're really trying to work out. So you're trying to do a mitzvah, and somebody else interferes with the mitzvah and doesn't let it happen for whatever reason. Don't blame the other person. You gotta say, listen, Hashem didn't want it to come out. What about the other person? The person was just a tool of God's to not make it happen. Yeah.
How do you know when perhaps you didn't give a big enough effort rather than Hashem didn't want it to come out?
Okay, so Rick's asking, how do you know you didn't make enough effort as opposed to Hashem didn't want it to come out? So the answer is that, first of all, the person has to be honest with themselves. Some people can be honest with themselves. Let's say you made all the effort, it just still didn't work. Okay, but then sometimes maybe you fall short. Okay, so then you have to be, you can still say, but Hashem, didn't give me that extra strength. Maybe I fell short, but he didn't give me the extra strength. And that's always the important factor. If at the end of the day it didn't work, Hashem knew it wasn't going to work. You made a mistake. Sometimes you make as we say, a boneheaded mistake. So I think a lot of boneheaded mistakes are not intentional. How come I didn't remember? You know why? Because Hashem didn't want you to remember. But you're supposed to always double check, and I always double check. Guess what? Hashem wanted you to forget and not to double check. Now, if you're just sitting in bed and being lazy and let things fall apart, well, then don't mix Hashem into that. But we're talking about people who are making reasonable efforts. You're really trying hard, right? And, things just don't work out, right? So, but then you have a tendency to get upset because, wait a minute, you foiled my plans. Oh, wait a minute. why were you doing this? For your plans or to do Hashem's plans? It was Hashem's plans. And if at the end of the day, Hashem says, I don't want it. I don't want it. Again, I don't want to get too political, but for those who felt, whatever, I'm not saying right or wrong, but those who felt that, Trump was this messenger of Hashem, if you felt that he was, and he was doing a lot of good things for Israel and all these things. So we could have a tendency, oh, now he's out. Now the liberals are going to put pressure on it. So it's going to be terrible. And it's all because they cheated. Whatever. I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I'm just taking the mindset of somebody like that. But guess what? Even if you feel that Trump's being president would have been the best thing and all these things, at the end of the day, you see Hashem wanted otherwise. And you could clearly see that so many things happened that normally would not happen. For whatever reason, Hashem wanted it otherwise.
But it's very hard to accept when, let's say, you're looking for a job, and you go week after week, you go to interviews, another interview, you don't get a job. And yes, it's Hashem's will, but it's so difficult for you to internalize that.
Okay, so Rick is saying, what if you're trying to get a job interview and you're going back and forth and you're trying and you keep failing? It's hard to internalize it's Hashem's will. Okay, it could be hard, but it's no harder than anything else to internalize what Hashem's will is. And obviously, every time you don't get it, you have to say, Hashem, you know exactly what you're doing. And this is the best thing. I shouldn't get this. And again, don't look at it that I'm a failure, that I can't do well in interviews. Now, of course, it doesn't help if you go into an interview as a schlump and you're burping in front of the guy, you don't have any manners. Maybe you have to do something as well in terms of hishtadlus. But if you've made a reasonable hishtadlus and it's just not working, it's not an indication of you being a loser. It's an indication that Hashem does not want you to have it now. Okay. Now, so we never attribute anything that is negative that somebody else is the source of that. Hashem is saying, I don't want it right now for whatever reasons. Now there's a whole other avoda of going to tzaddikim and saying, what's the reason? That's another avoda. And you know what? Often, you know why things fail? It's because we don't include Hashem in the project. A lot of times when you go about doing a project and you're not lishma, even though it's a mitzvah, but you're not including Hashem in it, well, you lose a lot of siyata d'shmaya. And the person might say, I tried, I did everything the way I'm supposed to do it, and it didn't work out. Why did Hashem make it not work out? So they could ask you a simple question. How often were you asking Hashem for help while you were doing it? Come to think of it, I wasn't even thinking about Hashem. It's just that's why it failed. That could definitely be one reason. There's all kinds of stories with tzaddikim. I don't remember which tzaddik it was, who was trying to make sure that he had the most kosher wine for the seders. And according to his stringencies, now we're not on this level at all, don't copy this at home, but a certain tzaddik, his stringency is that the wine for Pesach should be so holy that from the times that the grapes were planted, okay, till the bottle reached his house, a non-Jew would not look at it. Not look at it. For whatever reasons, it's got mystical reasons. I don't know. It's beyond what we can understand. Anyway, so he supervised the planting of the vineyard and everything and the growing. Everything was supervised, like unbelievable. And then the bottles were bottled, only Jews and all this. It was one last step. The wagon had to go from the farm to the Rebbe's house. That's all. And all of a sudden, there was a certain blockade that was made that the government wanted to check everything. And the guy says, what do you got in the wagon? The wagon was covered. He says, what do you got in the wagon? He says, nothing important. Whatever. Lamaisa, what happened? The guy took a look, says, okay, you can go. He goes to the Rebbe, says, Rebbe, I'm really sorry. So Rebbe went to another Rebbe and said, what happened? He said, how many times did you ask Hashem to help you that it should work? He said, not enough. Not enough. So that's the idea. The Tasha Rebbe, there's so many stories with the Tasha Rebbe. When I read the book about a year and a half ago, if anybody can get a chance, you should get that book. Art Scroll, I believe, or Feldheim has in English, The Life of the Tasha Rebbe. Tusher Rebbe was an incredible tzaddik, living outside of Montreal, built up his own community.
Oh, yeah.
And the standard line he would always say is the way the Tusher Rebbe worked was like this. He made the Hasidim try their hardest to accomplish a spiritual goal, whatever it would be, to help an orphan, to this, like to mamish. And sometimes you'd have to, rip heaven and earth apart. One time the government was going to close them down because they didn't have enough money to pay the utilities for months and months. And they only had like a few hours to pay it off, whatever. And he'd have to do Herculean tasks. And whenever the success would come, at the end of the day, he'd say, Yasher Koach, we did all this effort. It's amazing. And now the shamish is like expecting to get a big Yasher Koach. He says, but you should know you didn't do anything. He'd say it about himself too. And Mamish, he would do unbelievable miracles. Mamish was doing, and he was giving all the effort. And without the effort, nothing would have happened. But at the end of the day, he would always say, but you should know, we should be happy. What? That Hashem is happy? That the people are taken care of? The situation remedied? But don't for a minute think you get an ounce of credit. That's how he worked. So that's a level. That's a level of Beetle. That's why it's good just to read some of the stories about Tusher Rebbe. These Rebbes, they understood exactly what Beetle were, and they were very happy people. And let's continue the footnote. Vida, Ne'emana, and it's a true thing to know. To the degree that a person nullifies himself before Hashem, so too the gates of growth and success are open before him. And more than that, for Shabbos v'Dveikus Elyon, and the light of Shabbos, and the supernal cleaving, v'noyam Torah, and the pleasantness of Torah, v'shar madrigas, and all these other levels. As remember, we spoke about on Friday afternoon the Tish, the difference between Tov and Nachmad. Tov is what outside physically looks good, but the inner good, that's what he's talking about him. Spiritual success, light of Shabbos, feeling close to Hashem, tasting the sweetness of Torah. That all comes from a person who has bittul. And here's the rule, because there's another important part. The more you nullify before Hashem, that's how much the Shekhinah rests on you. And when the Shekhinah rests on you, that can only be a state of happiness. Okay, now we can go back to the upstairs part. V'hinei, with such an understanding that you are only a shaliach of Hashem, davar pashut umuskam, then it's clear and totally acknowledged. Shahakol zerak Hashem yisbarach. Then you know everything's from Hashem. But to merit to actually feel this way, zelo pashut. This is not easy. But it's not only that it isn't easy. Here's the kicker. The human nature is such that it opposes living that way. The nature that you as a physical, mortal human being has is you have a nature to want to feel independent, to a nature to feel you're something, and the very nature that God gave you, he's asking you to nullify that nature. So it's not just you're at a parv level. Now add on good. No, you're at a totally opposite level. You've been grown up to not feel this way. So you got to go from totally not feeling this way, discarding that, and then beginning to feel it that way. Therefore, you got to understand really well. As smiles, you got to really know what bittul is. And what's the proper way to acquire it? Yesterday, somebody asked me, so does this mean nihilism, where you're totally saying you're nothing? No, that's not. As you're going to see, the proper way of it is. Okay, let's move on to subsection Bays. So we've given an initial definition. Now we go to what's called Harchava Sabir. Let's expand the explanation. Avodas habitul, who the service of bitul is to enter the comprehension and the feeling of the unity and uniqueness of Hashem. Dahainu, which is, again, ideas we've mentioned, lahakir b'behirus, to clearly recognize shein od mavado klal. There's absolutely nothing besides him at all. Vein shum metzias b'dav, and there's no reality besides Yisparach Shmo, besides Hashem. V'kol nivraim chaim ha'oro. and all of the creatures live from his life. He acts upon them like an axe in the hands of a woodsman. In other words, like the woodsman hits against the wood and cuts the wood. Everything that happens to you is like Hashem is doing that all. Ayin Gimel. P.S. Yesod Amanahu, the foundation of Amunah is Hashem Yisbarach Bas Olam. Hashem created the world, V'humani also, and He runs it. V'soda Yichud, and what's the secret of Yichud? Who Omak Amunah is the depths of Amunah. V'avon Sheno Milvado Mamish, to really understand there's nothing else but Hashem. Ve'in Shum Mitzios Acheres Chutz Min Yisbarach. There's no other reality besides Him. V'yesh B'zah Harba Medregos. There's lots of levels to this. Aval Madrega Yesodis B'Madregas HaYichudi. But what is the fundamental level of Yichud is Ladash Hashem Yisrael Machayil Mahava Esakol. Hashem gives life and existence to everything. Vein L'Briya Shum Kiyum Atzmi. The creation has no independent reality. I feel real, not even for a second. Lakol Chai Maraloki. Everything lives by the divine light. Umamela consequently, but Omek, deeper now. Kivan She'ein L'Shum Davar Kimatz. Since nothing has an independent reality. Or Hashem besides, without that light of Hashem that flows with it, that means you have no reality outside of Hashem. Hard idea to integrate. We have no reality that comes from our own source. And we look at reality, and it seems that everyone's going on their own. It's only because of the divine light that illuminates through them. That's the only thing that keeps it going. So only Hashem can be called the reality. But the creatures, even though we are here, I'm doing, still in all. Since my whole reality, it's only a revelation of the light of Hashem that is pouring into it. Calls on the whole time. So we can't consider that we are self-sustaining. Any person can get that idea. That is not a hard idea intellectually to understand that we are not our own reality. And to think about it, to work hard and feel it until it gets to the logical conclusion. If we marry, we can go deeper and deeper as is explained in the holy books. You look in the Tanya, etc., etc. Okay, now back upstairs. Vitzarech, and we need shazeh yispaher eitz l'adam. It has to be clarified to a person until you reach a level to the extent you have such a clear recognition and feeling clear the reality of Hashem and this unity. Lo yargish es mitzios atzmo. The end result is you won't feel your own reality. You will only feel Hashem's reality that is manifesting through you. And when you feel that way, listen, people like to take drugs to get into a really good, happy state. This is the drug. This is the drug that you really are mavatli yourself. A person like that, he lives with awesome pleasure. Yoser migmol alaimo, more than what a mother could give you. V'tovla kolasman, it's always good for you. V'chalav odasa nasis mitoch leiv emes Hashem yisbarach. All your service is done with a true heart to Hashem. Kuchayas emes, because you're living with the truth. Shakol zerak Hashem yisbarach. It is all Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah.
Don't we innately need a personal sense of accomplishment in order to motivate ourselves?
Okay, Rick is asking, don't we need a personal sense of accomplishment to motivate ourselves? Yes, he will talk about that in about 3 pages. We have to be patient. It's going to come. It's going to come. Because there is this conundrum. If I'm not really doing anything, this VHR is great line. If I'm not really doing anything, why should I do anything? So that's an issue we'll have to deal with. We're not going to forget about that. Okay, now, a very important part. Gimel, the 3rd subsection, is called Dalid Madregas Habitul, the 4 levels of nullification. So this becomes the definition. You're not going to start at this highest level, like we're saying of the Tosha Rebbe. Let's take it way, 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 way down. And let's start with baby steps. Okay. You can't get there in 1 minute. You got to go step after step B'dalad madregas of Beetle, to the 4 levels of Beetle. Shem dalad madregas, kama ha'adam makir v'chayas v'tzeh Hashem Yisrach. There are 4 levels of how much a person recognizes and lives in the reality of Hashem. And this is the order. So in Gimel, we have now 4 subcategories, which are the 4 levels. The first subcategory is Bitul Shel Kabbalas Ol. It's Bitul that comes from accepting the yoke of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's that? Hamadrega Rishona, the very first level. This is every Jew should have. Vinyan, the concept is Hashem is recognize the reality of Hashem, like the king of the world. You got to know he is the king of the world. And he nullifies his wants for Hashem's wants. He still could feel he's an independent reality. I'm my own person. But the first step, there is a God. He is the king. And I have to listen to him. I might want to do this, but I can't go against his wishes. And that's what we say in the Shema. You accept upon yourself the yoke of heaven to do what? La'asos es ritzon hamelech, to do the wishes of Hashem. Gam kisheneged ritzonos, even if it's against your wishes. Umadregazu, and this level is called nikras bitol. It's bitol bit kabbalas ol, by accepting the yoke. That's what level 1 is. Umadregazu, and on this level, hadam margish kiikras asu, he still senses. Primarily, he himself, he totally feels himself. He's his own reality right now. So we're not telling you to jump into nullifying yourself that fast. How do we start? By nullifying your desires first. But he merits to understand there really is a king who runs the world. And you decide to give some space for the reality of the king. And there's a lot of people think they are the whole world. There's nothing else. Whatever I want, that's the whole world. You got to first, you think you're everything. So how about if you give Hashem a little space? Let him be the king. You still got your space, but you're going to at least follow what the king says. He feels he's living himself. But if the king makes a rule, he leaves what he wants. And now he enters to do the will of the king. That's the first step. Ayin hey, Vizu madregas. Did I do all this? Yes. 1 second, let me make sure. Yeah, I got it all. Okay, Vizu madregas olamasiya. There's 4 spiritual worlds. The worlds of Yabia, of Atzilus, Yetzira, Bria, Asiya. So the lowest world is the world of Asiya, down here, physical world. This is the level of the world of action. Olam, the world, Sharuba Ra, the majority of this world, the way we see it, is evil. Umiyuta Tov, only a little bit is good. In this world, the way we physically see this world. Because the person at this level still is Roa, he still looks, Umargish and feels, Be'ikar Sasfo. He thinks through his own lens. But in a specific way, pace, who knows say he gives Hashem some space. And what's the obvious analogy to that? Is Malucha, is the kingdom. Come on, Adam Shachai Be'ez Medina. Person lives in a country. He lives his own private life. You live in Canada, you live your own private life. The main thing you want when you live in this world is not what the government wants. You want what you want, okay? But the king forces you to do something. What's they do? If they're going to tell us to go into full lockdown, as much as you don't want to go into full lockdown, and you care about your own life, but you don't want him to throw you in jail. So you got to listen. But still, he's not going to run my whole life. I don't think about him all the time. Oh, but if he's the king and he tells you what to do, I got to listen to that. Now, a little bit more of the footnote. Kach, similarly, Shemitzad Echad Hu Makir B'Yitzel Melech. So just like he recognizes the reality of the king, but he feels that the king is an external part of his life. Day to day to day, you don't think of the king. When the king's rules intersect with what you want to do, then you think about the king. The king says, you can't do this, you can't do that. Okay? So that's first level of Beetle, which means I recognize Hashem is important. He is the boss, and I got to listen to what he says. I'll give him a little space. That's the lowest level. And we can jump right another one. 2 minutes is a short one. Next one, Beetle Bamidos. Next page. Hamadrega Shni, the second level. Madrega Shechas Lav Hashem. Now we're talking about people who want to serve Hashem and love him. The concept is you recognize much more the reality of Hashem. So you start having feelings of love, awe, and cleaving. From that, he's going to now novate a part of himself and his feelings. Umargish gam esovo, and he feels the one that he loves. He has feelings towards one he loves. Umadregas unikras bitol bamidos, and this is called nullification of our midos, of our feelings. Umadregas, and on this level, he enters an area of feeling a connection, of feeling connection to Hashem. For him, Hashem is not only an external, he's not a totally external reality. He's a part of his life that he really cares about. Hashem has, you have a love and a cleaving to him. And on this second level, he still feels himself. But here's the next point. The Gamargish as Hashem Yisbarach. He also feels Hashem. By the king, I don't care what the guy feels like, but here he feels like Hashem. And what's this? Ayin Zion, the footnote. V'zu Madregas Olam. This is mystically called the world of Yetzirah. That the Rizal says, Chatz Tov, half good, v'chatzirah, half bad. Because now you're beginning to see and feel yourself and Hashem. And what's the analogy? We'll end with this. Mashal is that who? Shpacha, family. That's what Hashem gives us, family. Do you have feelings to your family? Yes. It's not just external. There has to be love. Where I feel you, the other one, and your needs. You have yourself and your feelings and your family. That's the second level, where you now have feelings towards Hashem. You still think you exist completely, but your feelings are now shared. Hashem has some of your space with you. We'll end at that. We'll get to the next two levels tomorrow. Mirz Hashem. Shkoyach, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.